Isaac Asimov is one of the most important and prolific science fiction writers of all time. He's won multiple Hugo, Nebula, and Locus Awards, and has penned more than 500 novels among several literary genres. The Foundation series won the Hugo Award for All-Time Series, and Foundation is considered by many one of the greatest and most influential science fiction novels of all time. You can also take a look at where Foundation ranked among my top 10 on my top 210 science fiction novels episode, as well as see my guests, David Brin and the late Greg Bear, sharing some thoughts and history about the series. I recommend Foundation for fans of any type of science fiction that imagines the future or what our extended universe might look like. I recommend Foundation for those who are drawn to science fiction because science fiction imagines what could be out there and what could be. I recommend Foundation for those who haven't read it, love science fiction, and want to find something that just might blow their mind. The world building is phenomenal. I recommend Foundation for those who favor big ideas and galaxy-sized conflicts over deep character exploration. Asimov purposely ignores individual character development to highlight the inertia and predictability of the masses of humanity. Foundation intentionally introduces and drops characters to demonstrate the insignificance of the individual relative to societal, economic, and cultural tides on a galaxy, a universe-wide scale. Finally, I recommend Foundation for the clearness and utility of its prose. Asimov is telling us a story very clearly with the precision of a professor, avoiding purple prose and prioritizing making his ideas as understandable and entertaining as possible. If you've read or are planning to read Foundation, let me know in the comments. While this review is aimed at those who've read the novel, it will be as spoiler-free as possible so that those who've not yet read it can have an idea of what to expect. If you want to go in blind, skip ahead to the Bon Jovi-themed tribute music at the end, and then save the rest of this video for later. Off with his head! Hari Seldon has predicted the fall of the mighty galactic empire. This is scandalous, blasphemous, treasonous. What, is he nuts? The empire is grand, vast, and powerful, much like the Roman Empire once was. Foundation is a clear allegory, and I should delay no longer in pointing out that Asimov based the idea of a declining galactic empire on Edward Gibbon's 1776 novel and series, The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. Foundation is one of the most brilliant allegories ever written. Asimov imagines a future galactic civilization that has flourished under the rule of the Galactic Empire for nearly 12,000 years. Hari Seldon, a mathematician, psychologist, psychohistorian, is the only man who can see the future and the eventual fall of the empire. He's not a mystic. He's a scientist. He's created a new field of study, psychohistory. Seldon takes statistics and manipulation of the laws of large numbers to an extreme level. Psychohistory combines and extracts from sociology, history, mathematics, psychology, and other scientific disciplines to determine near-perfect probabilities of how galaxy-wide events will unfold. Seldon's psychohistory eschews consideration of individuals acting and instead measures the inertia of a population and societies numbering in the billions, trillions, and more. Among the tea leaves, Seldon foresees a dark age, a period of barbarism that will last 30,000 years once the empire falls. Approaching the end of his life, Seldon's legacy will be to implement a strategy to wield the predictive power of psychohistory along with a large selected group of scientists to manipulate events in the galaxy with an end goal of shepherding in a new empire in just 1,000 years instead of the inevitable 30,000 years. The obstacle in Seldon's way is the empire, not predicted to fall for another 300 years. You can imagine the aristocrats, politicians, commissioners, they're not ready to change their worldview or upend the status quo. They also don't want to do anything to turn Seldon into a martyr. Seldon manipulates these powers to exile him and set into motion the first leg of his plan. Seldon and his team of scientists will be exiled to a small planet at the edge of the galaxy, Terminus. On Terminus, they will undertake their initial stated plan to create an Encyclopedia Galactica to record and safeguard all the known information and history of the known universe. Guess what? They don't really care about creating an encyclopedia. That's just the cover story. The story will continue beyond Seldon's eventual death, but lucky for everybody, Seldon will at significant times in the future appear via pre-recorded holographic video in a time vault that he has programmed to match the predicted major crises as they approach. Included in Asimov's allegorical web are religious institutions and their followers, traders and economics, and predictable political manipulation. Most page-turnery in the book are the crises that Asimov sets up like bowling pins for his psychohistory to strike down. As a literary accomplishment, most impressive is the series when taken as a whole, and I'm likely to elaborate and do a review soon on that first trilogy. The stories of this trilogy were first written as individual short stories, and they appeared in the magazine Astounding Science Fiction in the early 1940s to early 1950s. It's worth mentioning that Asimov's broad and prescient use of nucleics, nuclear technology, as the dominant source of power predates the appearance of nuclear weapons in the Second World War. On the other hand, there will be some obvious misses when things like prolific tobacco use and nearly a male-only cast make the story feel less futuristic. One could argue that this future galaxy is one in which gender roles mirror those of 1940s Earth, but every time a character reaches for a cigar, we are reminded that the book is really old. Now let's talk about likes and dislikes. Like number 1. Asimov's uncanny ability to write stories with ideas that make perfect sense, convince you of their efficacy, and then shatter it all to pieces. Foundation represents one part of this talent, setting us up perfectly for what is to come in the sequel, Foundation and Empire. Like number 2, the ideas. Asimov did not write an action thriller where one empire is blown up and destroyed and another takes over. Asimov reminds us of the size of our world, our universe, and how things that happen today and tomorrow have been in the works for hundreds of years. Like number 3, the ideas. Asimov presents science as a religion, understanding the power that it will have over the masses. He brilliantly illustrates how faith can be wielded as a weapon. Like number 4, the scope. Many science fiction novels have attempted to cover large swaths of space and time, but few have done it with the balance and mastery that Foundation has. Asimov builds a world from one end of the galaxy to the other that I believe, and dazzles with a story that started 30,000 years ago and extends deep millennia into the future. Dislike number 1, the low-hanging fruit is to knock character depth. I'm not going to do that. Asimov basically waves his hand in the air, telling the reader that this is a novel that completely neglects the individual in order to completely commit to the notion that the behavior of the masses, society, civilization numbering in the trillions, their actions as a whole, considered over centuries, is the core focus of Foundation. So my dislike is the notion that critics ding this novel for having wooden or one-dimensional characters. Sure, I'm defensive about it, but asking why the characters are so flat in Foundation is like knocking the high-tech sentient robots in Dune. Newsflash, there are no high-tech sentient robots in Dune. Dislike number 2, too many cigarettes. Dislike number 3, this is a hard one to admit, but I strive to be accurate. While still 5 stars upon reread for me, and still one of my favorite books, I can't definitely put the reread as my number 1 most enjoyable read. It's right up there, and that's about as far as I'll go with that for now. Dislike number 4, this is more of a dislike on behalf of others. Tapping into my memory reading this 30 years ago, I remember disliking the big time leaps and the new cast of characters. Expecting it the second time around, it's just fine. I just hope that it doesn't prove an obstacle for new and especially young readers to this novel. Dislike number 5, I appreciate the utility with which Asimov wrote these stories of ideas, but I still would have preferred a little bit more imagery than he gave us. This is probably what I notice most when I'm comparing my first read as a very young man versus a reread as a not very young man. The book doesn't necessarily need it, but I would have liked to have seen what Asimov thought Trantor and Terminus looked like in a little bit more detail. Like number 5, this is a visionary work. Do we end up with Dune, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Babylon 5, Star Wars, Star Trek, and so many other science fiction staples without Foundation? Hypothetical dynamics of a vast and plausible interstellar civilization, a galactic empire, the manipulation of belief in a higher power, the laws of large numbers and the precision of its power to predict, the superiority of science and technology. This is a book that goes beyond the realm of impacting other and future media. Immeasurable is the influence Asimov's idea have had on many economists, physicists, social physicists, other scientists and thinkers, and it only gets better in Book 2, Foundation and Empire. Thank you for watching. I'm Michael Everts, and this is Fit to be Read.
It's the end of the Empire, but Dark Ages won't last forever. Foundation will survive. Trust seldom. Science like a new religion.
Consider the following.
Statistics say it happens this way. The many speaks greater than just one. Trust, say.